Great. Hello, folks, and welcome to the briefing, Sierra Club Pennsylvania's series of live legislative updates. My name is Melissa, she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Distributed Organizer for Sierra Club Pennsylvania, and I facilitate the series. Joining me today is Jen Quinn, our Legislative and Political Director, and Nate Regal, our Clean Energy Program Advocate. I'm dropping into the chat again our notes document. So that is called the Briefing Digest. You can check that out anytime for action items that we talk about in this session. We also link to the recording and the slide deck, and you can see all of our past session notes as well. So when we refer to the notes doc, we are referring to the Briefing Digest. Jen does have a slide presentation and we are recording, so keep that in mind if you do choose to turn your camera on when you ask your question. We do post these on YouTube. You'll get the slides and recording in your email tomorrow so that you have everything to reference. We do have closed captioning running as well. If you could hold your questions until Jen is done with her slides, we want to make sure we get through those, and then there will be time to answer anything that has come up for you. But of course, feel free to put them into the chat as we move along. Sometimes Nate can provide some real-time answers in the chat if you think of something. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jen.
Great. Thank you, Melissa, and thank you everyone for choosing to spend some time with us today on this rainy Tuesday afternoon. All right, folks can see my slide deck. Yes. Excellent. Thank you. So last week we had a really full slide deck. A lot had happened. This week, not so much, but there are a few things I wanted to put on everyone's radar just so you know where things stand. So this slide was from last week's presentation. I wanted to give an update. House Bill 500, which is part of the governor's lightning plan. This is the EDGE tax credit, semiconductors, hydrogen, milk, sustainable aviation fuel, and some reliable energy facilities are included in this. That was voted out of House Finance Committee on the 7th. I believe both chambers are still in session. The House, I think, is going to consider this bill on second consideration today, and there are 23 amendments filed to it. So it will be interesting as to how that shakes out. I think the one most likely to be adopted would target the Cuffs Run hydro, the pumped hydro along Susquehanna. Folks are familiar with that, making sure that they cannot use these tax credits. I don't think they were planning to do that anyway, but that was probably the most likely amendment I saw to be adopted there. And then, of course, this will likely go on to third consideration and a final vote soon enough in the House. And then House Bill 504, a small reason to celebrate community energy, passed the State House 114 to 89. This is community solar plus methane digesters. So we did pick up quite a few Republicans there. There's not a whole lot of reason to celebrate, but we do have a small one here. At passing the House is a big step. It's now in the Senate where it does face an uphill battle, but there is still a good chance that we get this done this session. There's still plenty of time left in this session and a lot of deals to be made to finally authorize community solar in Pennsylvania. And again, this is part of the governor's lightning plan, 2 of these 6 pieces of that plan. And then again, this slide should be familiar from the last session of the briefing, but I wanted to give folks some updates. So House Bill 789, which adds EV charging infrastructure to CPACE, which is property assessed clean energy, passed the House 107 to 96. So that's in the Senate. A good step, but again, faces an uphill battle in the Senate, like pretty much everything does. Senate Bill 349, which provides for bonding and decommissioning requirements for solar and wind installations, that passed the Senate 49 to 1. That's now in the House. This bill will likely end up as a trade for something. We don't know what yet. It's not a huge bill. We do know the solar industry wants this bill to provide some sort of stability or continuity instead of dealing with a wide variety of municipal requirements from location to location. So this would require just a statewide standard. And so they do want that. Sierra Club is officially neutral on that, but we are interested in a possible trade when this bill is teed up in the House for something like community solar or House Bill 789. So we'll keep folks in the loop there, what we're hearing with regards to a trade there. And then Senate Bill 682, renaming DEP the Department of Environmental Services. This is just a finger in the eye of DEP from Senator Yaw. It was voted out of committee. I don't know if his chamber is really interested in taking this up, but if it did pass the Senate, I'm very doubtful the House would do anything with this, since it is just silly and meant to aggravate the DEP. And then Senate Bill 430, which gives the Department of Defense veto power over wind projects near airports. That has stalled for now, thankfully. It's an unnecessary bill. It's kind of a dumb idea. It came out of a project that no longer exists. So we have been working with the chair of the Veterans Committee on this to try to get them to see the light, and I think they may have. So it is stalled for now. But again, we'll keep folks in the loop if anything develops there. And then a new bill I added to the list, Senate Bill 311. This is the preemption bill. We saw it last legislative session, seeing it again now, not surprisingly, when cities in California and a few other cities out west decided to ban gas hookups in new development. Gene Yaw again decided that we also needed to do the same thing. We also needed to prevent that happening in Pennsylvania. So a ban on gas bans, preventing local governments from banning any sort of utility service in new construction. So this is the ban on gas bans. We saw it last session. It was voted out of local government committee. My guess would be that this chamber would pass this, but I'm again very doubtful the House would do anything with this bill. So again, we're just seeing a lot of the same bills over and over, but wanted to update folks on where things stand and where they're progressing since they are in session these first few weeks of May. And then just as an FYI to folks, our legislative tracker has been partially updated for the year. We have about 80 bills in there we're following. We usually end up with about 160 or 70, so a lot more to add there, but just wanted to let everyone know this link is also in the notes if you want to see all the bills related to the environment we're looking at. Again, on this call, we really only talk about the most timely, what's happening now, but you can get a larger picture of what's out there in the legislature. And then our environmental scorecard, the new version came out just last year, so it gives you a good snapshot of where your state senator and state representative are when it comes to environmental votes. Really handy to have, especially if you're planning on meeting with them. And then the state budget, I'm sure most folks know it is that time of the year. June 30th is the official or unofficial deadline at this point. It is supposed to be done by June 30th, but we know that the budget goes way past that. Many occasions recently. And so this is one of the biggest issues with the budget this year, and whether it will be on time or what it will look like, is the mess in Washington and the uncertainty there. So between 30 and 40% of the state budget is revenue from the federal government, a lot of that going to education and Medicaid. So it's very difficult to do a state budget when you don't know what sort of money you're going to be getting from the federal government. Now, at the state level, we do know there are huge holes to fill when it comes to transit, CSEPTA funding, and education funding. These will be the biggest issues, taking up the most oxygen and the most money. Some of the ways to pay for that, taxing skills games. I'm sure folks have heard of that. Those little games that are just ubiquitous at this point. They are not currently taxed. There are a lot of hopes that folks can come to a common ground on there. The skills game folks want to tax at a very low rate. The governor wants to tax at a very high rate. They can come somewhere in the middle. The legislature is likely to approve that and get a new source of revenue, which we really need. Legalizing and taxing adult use marijuana is also on the table. I believe the House passed a bill that would do just that. I'm very doubtful that the Senate will do that, but again, another source of revenue that's likely desperately needed for the state. And then the latest rumor I heard regarding the budget is maybe we will have a short-term budget that runs from the end of June until the end of December. And then we'll start this all over again, due to the uncertainty at the federal level. Again, just a rumor. I don't know who would really want to do that. We'd have to restart the budget process again in January, but that's what we're hearing in Harrisburg. There's a possibility of just a 6-month budget to fund the state, given the mess in Washington, D.C. And then Reggie oral arguments were today. I don't know if anyone was able to tune into that. This link should have a recording to the oral arguments that could be streamed when you have time. I'm curious if folks attended, what they thought. We can discuss this at the end of the briefing today, but just keep in mind, if you do listen to it, the court is not addressing whether Reggie is good policy or not. The question really is this a fee or is this a tax? And if it's a tax, then it's a problem because only the legislature can levy a tax. And if it's a tax, then it's overreach by a state agency. So very narrow question that the court will be deciding, or the court can remand this back to Commonwealth Court, and this can just go on for a much longer period of time. But again, oral arguments were today. We still have no idea when we'll hear the decision. If I had to guess, it will be after the Supreme Court retention races in November. So maybe sometime next year, maybe not. It all depends, again, if it's remanded to Commonwealth Court or not. But definitely an interesting event. If folks have the time, I would recommend, listening in on that. And then again, something else from last week that I'm just going to put out there again, in case we have new folks. DEP has the proposed rulemaking on notification requirements for unauthorized discharges to waters of the Commonwealth, water pollution. This is something that was a bill Merck Pharmaceuticals has been lobbying for and pushing since 2019. It was easily defeated because it's a really terrible idea. Essentially, it allows the person making the spill to determine if it's pollution and if they have to report it to DEP or downstream water users. So hugely problematic, eroding the Clean Streams Law, and a terrible idea. I went into this a lot last week, but for new folks, if you have an interest in this, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to go into it further, but I wanted to flag for everyone again, virtual hearing for public comment and testimony is May 15th at 1 p.m. There was a May 8th quote unquote deadline to register for that, but I don't know how much of a hard deadline that is. But the big flag is written comments can be submitted by June 4th. So even if you don't want to testify, there is the e-comment portal. You can put in a written comment. We also have 2 or 3 pages of talking points to help with that. We're more than happy to help folks craft a comment there because it's, again, hugely important to get to DEP and let them know that this is a terrible idea. Also a good idea to submit a letter to the editor if anybody's interested in doing that. Melissa and I are also happy to help craft those. And then some upcoming committee meetings I wanted to flag for folks. Monday, May 12th, of course, this already happened, but I do want to flag for folks that anything that is live streamed at this point is available to view on demand when you have time. So this was a hearing on PJM, the Regional Transmission Organization, which is what all of the hearings are about these days. Upcoming hearing tomorrow on electric transmission, in-house energy, and then not tentative any longer, confirmed Monday, May 19th, the Environmental Committee will be holding a public hearing on press, which is, again, a part of the governor's lightning plan, House Bill 501, updating our alternative energy portfolio standards. So a very important hearing, which will likely precede a vote in that committee. That should happen within the next few weeks, the vote, not the hearing, which will be on May 19th. And then flagging the remaining session days for each chamber. Again, they are wrapping up for the month of May. There will be a lot of behind the scenes meetings between leadership and the governor's office working on the budget in May. And then both chambers are back for most of June to hopefully try and get the budget done on time or within a few weeks of that June 30th deadline. And then I flagged this the last briefing. I will flag it again. Virtual Climate Lobby Day with our partners at Penn Environment. 30-minute virtual meetings with your state legislators focusing on the lightning plan and some other issues. You can sign up, the link here or in the notes, and feel free to share this link also with anyone you think would be interested, because we do want to have a good turnout there in the legislature. And I think that's all I have. Yep.
So this is just our action alert roundup page. So if you joined us last week, you saw the debut of this slide that you will see at every briefing now. We do have our action alert page link there that you can bookmark and check regularly. The only change from last week is that because HB 504 did pass the House, so that's the community solar bill, that alert has been updated to now direct to the PA Senate. So if you did already submit that to the House, you can now go in, do it again and send it to your state senator instead. So I anticipate that's going to be here for a while, but otherwise nothing new on our action alert page. And our next slide is just a reminder that our chapter advocacy team is the home of all of our legislative and policy volunteering. So you are invited to join us first Thursday of every month or just through email. links to that on the slide. And I think that is it for the slides. But before we get to questions, I do want to point out to folks that immediately following wrapping up the questions at 5:30, we will be having a lobbying basics training session. We do this twice a year or so, where we just kind of go over, Jen's recommendations for how to best speak to elected officials. We're going to do a little bit about crafting your own story to tell to folks. It's going to be really quick, 30 minutes, 40 minutes tops. If you've joined us before, the content is pretty much the same that you've seen. But, feel free to come for a refresher, some fresh conversation about it. So that is immediately following this. So yeah, stick around if you are able. With that, we will get to some questions. Let's see. Bill says, how do they expect us to reach net zero? I think that is probably a question that doesn't necessarily require a response. And then his follow-up question is, could Reggie case ever get to federal Supreme Court?
No, it will end with the state Supreme Court eventually making a decision, since it is a state regulation. So we'll not get to the federal Supreme Court.
And then Bill also asked, is there a replacement bill for PACER? And Peter did weigh in, HB 503. Any other comments on that, Jen?
Nope, that is PACER this time around. It should be very similar to what PACER was last session.
Right. And then I see Howard's hand.
Yeah, hi. I'm trying to encourage people in our Delaware County group to advocate for these bills with their state legislators, but there's so many coming all at once. Are there one or two that stand out as higher priority or more likely to be swayed by our communicating with legislators?
I think the lightning plan will probably be a big focus for us and a lot of other environmental groups. I think certain pieces of that are more likely to move than others, like EDGE, which is really not a priority for us, but then community energy, the reset board, press is hugely important. I'm less optimistic that that will move, just given that it's a controversial issue. But yeah, I think the lightning plan is something folks could coalesce around.
So you would suggest we encourage people to just write for in support of all of the bills in the lightning plan.
I think that's a really easy lift, just supporting the lightning plan, and it could be House Bill 500 to 505. They're mostly all good bills on balance. It's a good solid plan. I'm happy to go into this further with you, but again, like on here, we try to talk about what's most timely. That's why I flagged community energy and EDGE. Reset might pop up, but yeah, I think talking about press is hugely important because it's a very important thing to do, right? Increasing the AEPS, going to 35% clean energy by 2035. It's less likely to pass because it is a big piece of legislation, but it's still hugely important to talk about and try to get the folks in your district, your representatives, talking about it also. Like, part of passing a bill isn't just us asking for it, but it's members of the caucus asking for it too. So maybe you have a good rep, but they're not really outspoken, right? So trying to get them to be outspoken and talking to their leadership about this, talking to the governor about this is also helpful.
Is there any way to monitor whether our rep is active in support of this, or is just passively voting for it?
I mean, you can check their social media, right? If there's a press conference, if they attend, you can also ask them flat out, like, are you willing to talk to your leadership about this? Are you willing to pen an op-ed about this, right? And like Delaware County, you have a lot of folks who are very green, right? We know that they have good scores. Now, are they all willing to lead on this? Probably not. And so that's, a conversation to have with folks, right? They're willing to vote on it, and that's great, but are they willing to really push it and lead on it? And that's a different issue.
Thank you.
Okay, Elaine.
Yeah, Jen, who introduced HB 501 Press, and are you aware, is there a co-sponsor memo, and have there been co-sponsors?
Yeah, so Representative Danielle Friel-Otten, who's I think Kester, she is the prime sponsor. There is a co-sponsor memo. I haven't checked it lately, but I can follow up with you on that. The legislature's website is new. I don't know if folks have been on there. They're revamping it, and so it's difficult to find anything at this point, but I'm certain there's probably a good number of co-sponsors on there, but I can. Oh, Nate has put it in the chat, so folks can check the co-sponsor memo and see who's on it. Thank you, Nate.
Hi, Bill.
Hi, thanks, Jen. So if the oral arguments are successful, that it's not a tax, does it then automatically get implemented? Is it the next step would be, because PADEP had already created the rules, that we have the authority to go right into the next auction? Or is the governor going to weigh in and try to interrupt it, or somebody else? And then what's the risk that the other side is going to object so much to this success that they're going to kill community energy? You know, but what's your thoughts on strategy?
Yeah, it's tough. So, I mean, if the Supreme Court agrees that this is not a tax, then, the injunction should be done away with, and, Reggie should be implemented. Now, the timing of that, I think, depends on when the next auction is and what it takes for us to participate in that, but there shouldn't be regulatory hurdles to our participation at that point. Now, will the governor ask for it to be delayed? Who knows? Maybe. I do know that the Senate Republicans, they adamantly oppose this. They were asked, they said, the governor introduced the lightning plan. What is your alternative? Their alternative was do away with Reggie. And so I think at this point, they're unwilling to move pretty much anything energy related until Reggie's decided. If Reggie is decided in a way that they disagree with, I wouldn't be surprised if they spitefully tank everything. I'm also concerned that the governor may use it as a bit of leverage to get something he wanted. Like if he wanted press to pass, would he say, pass press and I will do away with Reggie? I think it's a possibility. Now, again, this is just me saying this. It's not the administration saying this, but they don't have a whole lot of leverage when it comes to getting things done. And we know he's not a fan of Reggie. So would he be willing to make a deal to get other things done, like press and community energy and something else? So it's something we're thinking about, but again, it's all speculation at this point.
Sure, thanks for your thoughts.
Christine?
Yeah, is there any kind of cheat sheet to help us correlate these acronyms for bills with their House number and their Senate number? I'm somewhat new to all this, and there's so many acronyms flying around. Is there any kind of cheat sheet?
We can probably send you some fact sheets that will be helpful. I think one of the best things when it comes to this world is just sort of learning by osmosis and being around something enough that you will pick it up. I know it may seem daunting because we're talking about Reggie and we're talking about DEP and press and PACER, and the administration loves a good acronym. But yeah, being around it is just really helpful and will help you on that. But we can send you some fact sheets that might help out. And we can probably link them in the notes so everyone can have access to those.
Great.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to for me to go add these to the digest. So thank you for bringing that up, Christine, and that's a good idea, Jen. I will do that, folks. We did also have last year a webinar called PA's Energy Alphabet, which did more of a dive into let's see, AEPS, press, PACER, Reggie. There was a bunch in there. Obviously, the bill numbers have changed, but we did try at least to go through some of this alphabet soup of acronyms. And if it makes anyone else feel any better, I will never be put on the spot and be able to explain what the words are in each acronym. I will always panic and get the bill number wrong and the acronym wrong. So no pressure on anyone else. Okay, we are coming up on time. Do we have any final questions? Okay, so then I'm just going to leave this Zoom room open. If you are staying for our lobbying basics training, just sit tight, take the next maybe 5 minutes to, give yourself a little break, a stretch, a drink, and then we will reconvene to do that short little segment. Like I said, 30, 40 minutes tops. It's not going to be a long, detailed workshop, but we are also waiting for some other folks to join us, so I want to give them time to get into this same room. If you're leaving, have a wonderful evening, and we will let you know when the briefing returns again. We do not have one scheduled for next week, so just keep your eye on your email, and we'll let you know when we are reconvening on Tuesdays at 5. So take care in the meantime.